Hi, it's Joe here for Ashdown. I'm here today with bass legend Guy Pratt. Thank you very much, Guy. Thanks for coming down to Ashdown to hang out.
That's all right. I was due a trip anyway. I'd like to come and see the lads.
Yes. Well, we wanted to talk today about bass gear, about kind of all your bass gear.
Yes.
You've had an awful lot of throughout the years.
Yeah.
But,
I guess.
and an increasing amount of stuff that has your name on it. Loads of like signature things have kind of come out.
I wouldn't say loads.
Well,
no, you're right. It's nice, isn't it? There's kind of it makes you feel seen.
Yeah.
And I've read and most of it is you kind of, when you've been playing as long as I have, you realise stuff that there is particular to you that you can put your name to.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm not really looking for anything anymore. I know what I do and I know what I want stuff to sound like. So then you can go, yeah, that's that and that's me.
Right. Yeah, of course. But you've had a bunch of basses, a couple of pedals, and as I have deftly segued.
Oh God, you're making me sound like some sort of signature whore.
They've been on for a period of time.
Marcus Miller, I think you can get a fridge, can't you know? It made me sound like Kiss, like I'm the Kiss of basses.
Yeah, not quite that.
No,
but I was deftly segueing into the new Ashdown Guy Pratt.
Which I am incredibly proud of. And this is from years of just sort of chatting backwards and forwards with Mark and Dan. And like I said, and it is this thing that we. Mark is a Wem fetishist, that's probably the best way of putting it, as am I. And this kind of goes back to something that started. I don't know if it was on the 2006 David Gilmour tour when it was Phil Taylor, who was our production manager, was David's tech, and I don't know if it was in a fit of pique or something, but he replaced the Ashdown logo on my 8x10s with a Wem logo. And rather than annoying anyone, we always went, that looks brilliant. And I think that's what kind of got Mark. We started thinking, Wem, we do like Wem. And there's that lovely sort of Pink Floyd association. For some, it's like, if you mention live at Pompeii, everyone has that subliminal memory of the camera tracking around the back and the Wem cabinets with Pink Floyd London on it, which like the Beastie Boys lifted from the video. And someone else has lifted it as well. And there's just something so iconic about that old Wem thing. And the fact that, so much of everything we know to do with gear and like monitoring and PAs and everything was invented by Wem.
Well, and it's such an iconic grill cloth, even if you don't know the heritage.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's just something that's been, mulled and talked around and so eventually, and I think we started talking about it a few years ago, like, wouldn't it be great if I just had something that was just like one of those sort of classic old amps.
Yeah, so we did a couple of like Wem grill cloth 310s for you as well.
You did, which I think that's what I'll be taking out with me.
Amazing. With the.
I don't know that you can't. I don't see why you can't. Why Ashdown can't do it.
I have no idea, but yeah, they were cool. The 310s with the Wem grill cloths were cool, and at that time you were using ABM, either 900s or 900s, which you've used for.
I've used forever since I. Well, it's funny because my history with Ashdown goes back. It's kind of always because I was off the road basically for like nearly 8 years, from '97 till 2005. I was basically I had a studio and I was just doing studio. Doing music for TV and film and stuff like that. So didn't really have my eye on the ball with amps. And as soon as I went out, obviously I spoke to Mark, and so. I've basically only ever used stuff that he's designed. So the first was when I went out with Roxy Music, was when I got my first ABM.
Really? Yeah. Wow. Right. Those are like, I don't know, they're Evo 1s.
Evo Stick. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. But the ABM you've used forever, and this is very much the Interstellar is inspired by.
It is inspired by that. There is a thing of because. People might say, is it too much like an ABM? But the point is, it's like Jeff Beck. I asked Jeff Beck about his signature Strat. He said, well, why reinvent the wheel?
Sure.
And the thing is, I didn't do a signature amp because I was dissatisfied with my ABMs. Right. The whole point is I'm absolutely satisfied with my ABMs. But the thing with it, there's a couple of little tweaks on this, and especially in the valve department. And a lot of it is, I'll admit, a lot of it is design. And there might be a slight premium for the design, like there is in everything in your life. Yeah. It's
Well,
I just wanted a really sexy, classic-looking amp, and you know,
it is that, yeah.
And it is that. So that's kind of what it is. I mean, yes, it does have. The point is, if you know, if I don't know who doesn't love ABMs, and if they don't, you know, then I don't know if there's anything here for you, but maybe there is. I mean, because the point is, that it's such a beautifully transparent amp if you want it, and it's also got, like, you know, the valve, and it's got, you know, Ashdown EQ is phenomenal, and you can take this thing anywhere you want.
It's the beauty of hybrid amps, the fact that you can do a bit of both. That, you know, having a valve drive means you can make it hairy. You can. Well,
because the thing is, the thing is, I'm not, for people who know me, I'm not really associated with driven sounds. You know, I'm you know, an 80s boy. I was never particularly hi-fi. I was never a super hi-fi guy. I know the sound I like, and it's kind of, it's a little bit posh, but not that posh. Right. You know, and quite. That's why I always love. Because all Ashdown stuff has that transparency if you want it. But since I've been with the Sources, of course, and suddenly I'm looking at vintage sounds. I'm looking at...
I noticed you EQ'd this one earlier, and the first thing you've done is dime the mids.
Exactly. And realising that I used to occasionally just use a little bit of valve. So, but now I actually need it. I mean, the great thing with this is, you know, I actually use 3 distinct settings for different stuff. And because the great thing is there's actually enough drive on this where... You know, stuff where I previously would have had to kick in a pedal. Right. You know, you don't. But it's drive is playing a much bigger part in my life than it used to.
And we have made this one hairier, so certainly the tube drive is supposed to give a little bit more.
The 12AX7.
The 12AX7.
Is it 12 or 12AX7?
It depends. Depends which side of the equation.
I'm sure there'll be emails. People will be very kindly pointing it out.
Inevitably. But you've done something that I think a lot of people do when they have signature models that aren't, you know, like, as you say, like, they're not reinventing. You're honing something. Yeah. You've done something that a lot of people do, which is take things away rather than.
Well, there is that. Yeah, I mean, there's I mean, it's the compressor and the sub are still there.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm honest with this, I think the way the sub is intended on this is, which is a great thing, and I'm sure a lot of people find useful, which is to give you that extra bit of weight. Right. That's not how I use it. I'm a full-on octave guy.
Yeah, you use Box OC2s.
I'm an OC2, you know, kind of girl.
One of the few people who manages to get it to track all the way down.
Well, I actually don't. I think that's more a perception. I really, really don't. Right. Yeah, it's like, especially things like Earth Song, which is in which is in A flat, which is the worst possible key for it. And you really don't want to listen to that too closely. Gets better when it goes up to B flat. But so I don't really. It's still in there, but I had it taken off. The compressor, I do use, but not necessarily as a compressor. It's kind of, I use compressors very much. I mean, because I have like 3 in my board, and I'll use up to 3 at a time. And to some extent, you're sometimes using your compressor just as a volume boost.
Right, I see.
You know, or it's also kind of the more effects you've got, the kind of more compression you find you need sometimes. You know what I mean? With some of the Floyd stuff, I end up with, I've got 4 pedals on. There'll be like 2 compressors in the chain.
I wanted to talk to you about compression because I feel like that's a real key part of your sound as well. But we'll come on to that in a bit. So the compressor is in there, but you can.
It's on a foot switch, and it's just set 75%, which is something I would use.
Right.
But like I said, it's if we're honest. Most people who care about their compression, they have a compressor and they love it.
Of course.
You know, it's a nice thing to have, but it's not But also, it's for me, because it's, you know, so much is about design, and I wanted this to be symmetrical,
right?
You know, and it's this lovely smiley face, very positive. Smiley face. These are smiley faces. It's all smiles. It's like something out of an Acid House flyer.
It's great. I mean, we're really happy with it here at Ashdown. Like, there's so much character to this. You know, it's such a specific product, and so.
Well, I love it because it's so Ashdown and it's so me. So that's, you know.
Yeah, it is great. But yes. So I want to talk to you about all your other stuff as well. So we're going to have some other videos that go more into depth about the Interstellar, and, you know, obviously check it out. We're really proud of it.
I'm really, really proud of it. That's why it's got my name on it.
Yeah,
it's also just a really cool name. Who doesn't want an amp called an Interstellar 600?
Yeah, it's a great name. But yeah, let's talk about some pedal stuff. Why not? Seeing as we touched on compression. Compression is something we also make a signature compressor.
Well, exactly. I have this thing, which is a 3-band, which I think is just the right amount of sort of, you know, of of control.
I mean, I would call this like an effects compressor more than sort of an always-on compressor, because it's
definitely
it's so much. Like it's not a compressor if you're not.
But that's what you want. You see, this is the key to when you're going into something like an OC2,
right?
Or coming out of an OC2 rather. That's I mean, a lot of tracking glitch can be covered by squashing your notes together.
I see. There you go. That's a pro tip.
Probably should have let on about that. But so yeah, that's. Exactly, there are different. I mean, I do have I have a lot of my pedals. I'll be honest. Are basically, I just have a look at David's pedal board and just go, well, that's obviously the one to have.
I've seen you using an Origin Effects. You've got the bass compressor.
The Cali, that's an effect compressor.
Yeah,
that's
great. That's really like a studio rack compressor in a pedal. That's really good.
That is really, really nice.
You can use that subtly. That can be kind of an always on.
You can, but here's the other reason is that I'm not. Is that basically rather than go and twiddle knobs between songs, I'd rather just turn something else on.
Right, I see.
So that's why. So so I do tend to. So it's like if I'm going to use a phaser, I just use a phaser. I have the phaser setting I like. I don't mess with. If I needed 2 phaser settings, I'd have 2 phasers. I don't know what that says about me. To be saying, well, it means I clearly have someone who can organise a big board for me.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I do have my always-on compressor is a Demeter compulator.
Okay.
Which is just I have set really subtly, and that's just always on.
Right. That's interesting. I didn't realise that would be your always-on compressor. I'd seen recently you were using the.
Because it's David's always-on compressor,
right?
And if it's it's like, which means you can't argue with it. It's clearly the best choice there is.
I think I'd seen you using a Boss BB1X on your small board recently.
That is okay. I maybe shouldn't. Okay, I've got my baby board, which is just when I've got to carry it myself. Right, and it's perfectly good. And it's, to be honest, it's effects that I've been given that haven't made it into the big board.
Right, I see.
Which means they're all fine, they're all perfectly good. It's a lot of Boss stuff. Matt at Boss has been very kind to me. And I do actually, I've got to say, I do have a certain loyalty to Boss because they were the first, and I also have as we talk about the mobile, I have a big thing about. I like things that are affordable when, I mean, there are things which have to be just absolutely the shizzle. And there's with a lot of effects, they don't necessarily have to be, there are some times when just a really basic bass compressor is fine for something. Like I would say when you're using it, just if you're just using a massively driven signal or an octave or something like that, you just need something that's going to squash the thing. Yeah, you don't need,
No, exactly. I often wondered if this was inspired by because you had a CS2, the old Boss CS2 on your board.
I did
for a while, and they are sort of known for being quite hot.
That was in fact actually I had that because that came in the board that I inherited when I started playing with Floyd, which was an old board of David's, so that would be. But and again, that was something that I used for when I was using a lot of effects.
Right. Yeah.
Just to keep the swirling under control.
I bet. Yeah, I imagine so. And then another signature pedal that you have, the only other signature pedal other than the compressor, and it was unexpected. Like I didn't expect it to be a tremolo. It's by Fox Gear.
No, unexpected. Yeah, it's by Fox Gear. Well, because those guys are great, and they
make great pedals.
And because actually all of the sources use, because basically they do that echo sex, which is kind of the nearest thing to a Binson.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in fact, I use that to but what's interesting is and I realised that one of these days, which has the tremolo in the middle, and that's always been a problem, finding a decent. I originally had, with Floyd, when I was doing it, there was some weird, I think it was Pete Cornish who built it. Right. It was just some weird homemade rack mount tremolo thing. And most trends don't, because what they used on the original record, I don't know if it was Roger Mayer who built it or someone did. It wasn't the standard tremolo because it's more like a gate.
Right.
You know, it's like really brutal. And needs to be. And I couldn't find a tremolo, and that did that. So Specter Fox, and I think they managed to speak to whoever it was, and they used the original circuit, whatever. So it's super vicious. But the funny thing is, it is literally for one of these days. That's what the fun. So it doesn't actually really need a speed knob. It doesn't need a speed knob. No, it's only ever going to be on full, and it's only ever going to be at whatever the delay time is for to go with one of these days. So, and that's actually sold really quite well, which I assume is the Pink Floyd tribute band just for one of these days, which is fine.
Well, it's legitimately a very good compressor. I think it was a very good.
No, it's a really, really good tremolo. That's what I use, and this is, and again, that's something I'm really happy to put my name to because it was designed to do the job I need it to do, and it does that job perfectly.
I guess so.
If anyone else needs that job doing it, it'll do that job with them as well.
It was just unexpected, I guess. I think I imagined if another signature pedal was going to come out by you, I would have expected either an octave or maybe a chorus.
But again, there's the thing, I'm so associated with the OC2.
Yeah.
That it's like, why do something else?
Right,
And this was the although, having said that, my original compressor, and I'm sure I've talked about this in places before, the first compressor I had was a Pearl.
Okay.
Pearl did a range of effects, and I don't know if it was the drum company or a different company, but in the 1980s, they did it, and I bought it from the Bass Centre, and that had the 2 octaves. The funny thing is, it's got the 1 octave below, and it's got the 2 octaves below, which no one has ever used. Ever.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. It's one of these things. It's one of these. There's some guy who spent ages in the factory doing the soldering and all the stuff for this second octave that no one has ever used. But it also had an octave above,
right,
which was a terrible piece of engineering. It didn't work at all, and it didn't give you an octave above. What it did give you was a very thin fuzz version of your original octave, which was brilliant. It was actually a really brilliant thing to dial in. But again, it wasn't meant to be. But that was the thing, like in the 80s. What was so funny about this was that all these companies were coming out with stuff. They come up, especially with effects boxes, with studio, and it would all be multi-effects. Here's the new Yamaha SPX, whatever, and it does everything, right? And it's meant to do everything. But the thing is, someone, usually Lee Scratch Perry, would discover that it actually does this one thing that Yamaha or Roland had no idea and had no intention of it ever doing. But it does this one thing, and now everyone has to have it for this one thing that it wasn't even built for.
Yeah.
And but again, and that's the same with this. And this Pearl thing got nicked from some gig or something, and then it turned up. There was some. I had some scratch on it, and it turned up back at the Bass Centre, and I had to buy it again.
Do you still use it?
I lost it. I got nicked again. I don't know.
Well,
maybe Barry's got it again. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting what you say about like effects don't necessarily have to be affordable, to sound good. It is more about
because there is the whole. And I don't mean to belittle it because there's lots of fabulous boutique makers out there, but there is also there's a lot of pants.
Yeah, I remember seeing you at some sort of. Like maybe the London bass show, something like that, where you were doing a talk and doing a little bit of playing. I can't remember exactly. I think you were using quite a lot of phaser or something like that throughout. And I was like, that sounds great. I'm gonna go check out this board afterwards. There was a Boss ME50.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing is from when I did my comedy show, when I did my stand-up show, and the thing is, what I needed. All I needed was I didn't actually need my exact sound. I needed something that would show you what that sound was.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? It was just like a demo. And there was no point carrying a pedalboard. So I actually have an incredibly comprehensive selection of Boss pedalboards, from which go from and it's so funny, none of which I ever learned how to program properly. I mean, whoever organises the programming at Boss, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, there's. I don't think interfaces and making things easy is
no, it wasn't that. It just reminds me of the old days of kind of the old Akai samplers.
Sure.
It's like, oh god.
Yeah, they sound great. Just
it does sound great, but those are just things where I just need something to give this. But the funny thing is, they all had essentially an OC2 built into them.
Right. Yeah.
As long as I got an OC2, some sort of compressor, and a bit of chorus, then that tells the audience what I need them to be told, whilst not necessarily, obviously it wouldn't pass muster at a David Gilmour show, obviously.
Sure.
So,
But yeah, they did sound great. Well, let's talk about basses and stuff. Because again, we'll talk about like some signature discs. You have actually brought along one of your...
I have brought some, yes.
One of your Betsy's, or what did you...
it is the Betsy bass. I call them Betsy, obviously because I have Betsy, I can't call it a Betsy. So I call them Betsoids.
So this is the bass collection approximation of your original 1964.
My 1964 Burgundy Mist jazz bass, and this has EMGs in it, which is the kind of defining characteristic.
Yeah, of course.
Even that, there's something. There's an indefinable thing about Betsy as a bass, but the thing is, because when I did it, the EMGs in Betsy are active. And when that was done, of course, no one would dream of putting active EMGs in a 64 jazz.
That's sacrilege. You was a prison for that.
No, absolutely. It's a mandatory 5 to 10. And I lost my mind when Sid, my tech, did it. But it was like, oh my God, but it sounds amazing. And it does sound amazing. There is something about that absolutely works. And I do actually take one of these on tour.
Well,
this is one I played at the Roundhouse.
Yeah, you can see that in the Roundhouse video. Oh, it's that very, very modern.
It's this very one,
Yeah, it was great to see it because, of course, it's an affordable instrument. Like it's
a completely affordable instrument.
£600 for an EMG loaded.
It's £500
in Burgundy Mist, and
they got it right. It's quite funny because Barry tried one a few years ago, which just came out the most revolting pink.
I've seen the picture. There's a picture of you two holding it.
Yeah, that's not happening. No, but it's not. And for me, it's like different to this. One of the reasons I did it with the bass end was also because I actually bought Betsy from Barry, not from them, but they brokered it. I collected Betsy from the bass center. I bought it from John Entwistle.
Yeah.
It was through Alan Rogan, the legendary guitar tech, and it was brokered for somebody Barrett. It came through the bass center, so that's where I picked it up.
Right.
And it was Chris, the bass center, who set it up originally, and it's always looked after it. So it felt right them doing it. But also there was a thing for my sort of champagne socialist principles. Even though I hate champagne, I don't drink anyway. But I wanted to do something really, really affordable, which is different to an amp. Because the thing with it, if you play the bass, you need a bass. Your bass is with you, if you're in a bedroom, if you're in a studio, if you're in a pub, if you're in an arena, if you're in a theatre, your bass is your bass. So whatever happens. Whereas your amp is you don't want an ABM in your bedroom. So this is relevant to my natural habitat these days seems to be theatres or with your arena. So that's why this is maybe it'd be nice to look at something that could be more bedroomy, but that's the different. That's why one is a high-end product and the other one isn't.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be honest. It's a really functional instrument. I think bass collection do that really well. It's nice to have the EMG upgrades, and it's great to have access to a colour that
it's just distinctive, isn't it? I've never been able to work out if it could be with such a great colour, and it's just like, is it ironically? Is it just vile beyond belief?
It's a Marmite colour. People are really into it.
Would you wear anything that colour? I did actually have an anti-price suit which was slightly that colour. Wow. But then there's a point going, that's really cool. There's a point going, man, those 80s. Yes, but it's certainly distinctive. Everyone knows, what it is, and it's. What I love, because the reviews are insane. I think Bass Guitar Magazine had it as one of their top basses of the 21st century.
Really? Wow. That's
and the reviews on the Bass Centre website, the most common refrain is there seems to be a 1 missing from the price.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. It's really.
Don't say which end.
Yeah. Yeah.
£5,951.
Another signature model that you had was your Status.
Status GP Vintage, which is a bass I use a lot. It's still this kind of a workhorse bass. I used to great for touring and studio. I do use those a lot. But, I didn't really have that much to do with that. Right. It's got I think the neck profile is mine, and I got them to switch the knobs around. I think because it had the pan at the front rather than the volume.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Right, okay.
But that's a great, dependable bass, and I've always liked status. For some reason, I like Ashdown. It's just that dependable, knows exactly where you are, plug it in, and it does the thing.
It's very different for Status because, for a start, I mean, it's bolt-on. I know Status do lots of bolt-ons, but it's not necessarily what they're known for. It's still a graphite neck.
It's graphite neck, yeah.
Proper jazz bass
profile. Stable, yeah. And it's got this kind of utterly ornamental F-hole in it because it's not actually a hollow bass.
I was going to say, yeah, it's hot. It's a precision-based shape. But it looks like it's hollow. Yeah. And it's a PJ configuration as well.
Which I love. PJ, I think, is probably my favourite pickup configuration, really.
You just like
even though none of my basses are... Well, actually, that's not true. My that's PJ, and of course my old Specters were PJ.
Right,
But that's the funny thing, I was doing those lockdown licks during the pandemic.
It's lovely to see the Specter back out and about.
Well, that was the thing, and it's because it was an excuse because I was playing songs I hadn't played for 30 years, so I'd actually just to get out the basses I played them on.
Right.
And it was great to have the Spectre out actually, because I do love to play that bit, but it's like for some that. To me, that's part of a period, so I wouldn't actually get out and play it.
It's quite a specific sound, isn't it? The Spectre.
It's a funny thing is when I play it now, it's way more kind of, it's a lot more hi-fi and posh than I remember it. It's like
that's exactly what it is. Like it's utter 80s clarity. Exactly. That brass nut, everything about it. I don't know.
And like most of the times I played it, certainly in the studio, it's one of those things. It was always DI'd.
Right.
It's only ever been through a posh mic preamp.
Yeah, sure. But you brought the Status back out for some of the lockdown.
I did, yeah. It was great to have that thing, which I bought from Soundwave in Romford back in the days when and it was so expensive. And the funny thing is that was because I bought the Steinberger. I remember the Steinberger was I think it was £1,100, which was that was a 3-year-old BMW back then, and then the Status was about 14. It was a ludicrous amount of money back then, but it was great to I was that dedicated. But the funny thing was, it was a fretless, and I bought it for Ice House, and I actually only had one song in the set that I had to play it on. So I was literally trying to think of anything I could play fretless on to sort of justify the expense. But it's I've got to say it's aged beautifully. I mean, it still looks kind of practically immaculate.
Yeah, it looks great. It's a great looking instrument. And that's
it looked naff for a while, and now it looks cool again. It's funny things,
it's come back around.
Yeah.
Is that the Status that you unsuccessfully tried to smash?
No, God, no. The one I tried to unsuccessfully smash was this was the last time. I can't tell this story again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that is
no, but that was a bodge job that I hadn't thought when I asked Rob if he had any basses, because I wanted one to smash. Didn't occur to me that he was going to give me something made of carbon graphite.
Yes, it's not going to quite do the same. No. Not going to quite do the same thing. And then I think one of the most interesting, weird signature models you've had is the Warwick. The sliding pickup single cut.
Which is a great thing. It was a great idea. It was because it was hands at Warwick. They were. It was. I think it's because one of them. Someone found out that I had my old Frameless Triumph, which I played in the Gilmore Remember That Night video, which I bought when I was like 19 or 20. When I came home for my first tour, I bought that thing from Andy's in Denmark Street. Never really learned to play it. It was just sort of furniture for years, and lovely furniture it was, lovely objet. I got invited over to the factory, and they said we should do something together. And first I asked them. I said, I was trying to think. They were trying to give me basses, and I don't take basses for the sake of it. I get off a lot of stuff that I don't take. And I thought, what would be really nice would be like one of the old Framelesses that Bill Wyman used to play.
Right.
And they built me these two basses, freshman and fretless, but they were nothing like it. They were really big, really sort of Les Paul shape. And it's like, that's not it. But what can you say? So I've still got those. But then I've always had this idea. I wanted to do because one of the first basses I ever had, I used to have a Dan Armstrong with the sliding pickup.
Single sliding pickup. Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't it be great to have two sliding pickups? Because because pickup placement is so fundamental to what a bass sounds like. It's absolutely, which is why I don't really like precisions, and why I do like music notes because so the idea of having two sliding pickups would be brilliant. But so they built this thing, and it's Warwick craftsmanship. This thing is absolutely beautiful. The only it's got everything. It's single coil series humbucking. It's like every configuration possible. The problem with, and it is a beautiful bass. I use it on tour. It's on David Gilmour Live at Pompeii, and I do occasionally use it for things. It's very, very heavy.
Right. Yes, they tend to be. Weight isn't a thing that worries.
Yeah, it's very heavy. It's probably suits a younger man better. And the thing is, because it's got this big trench,
right? Yeah,
where the pickups sit, it gives it a slightly semi-hollow sound.
Oh, I see.
So it never gets quite the punch I want, but it does sound great. I mean, it's something I can really hear myself. And but we talked about it. I said, so what about sort of doing it as a signature tradition? Apparently, it was so expensive. They said no.
They'd never done pickups like that before, so I imagine those would have been. Yeah, they would have been.
I mean, it was amazing of them to do it for me. And I'm eternally grateful. I love it. I've actually got two of them. I've got the sort of prototype and then the one sort of finished one, which you will often see. Actually, because whenever I do the Rock on Tours podcast from London, sometimes I do it in Brighton, sometimes I do it in London. When I do it in London, they're both hanging on the wall behind me.
Yeah.
Because it was my missus, who's very good at this sort of thing. When I'm just sort of, this place needs to go away. She went, actually, those were really nice if you hung them up as a pair on the wall.
I see.
So there you go.
There you go. Well, yeah, it's a huge amount of space that you can actually move those pickups around.
And tonally, it's fantastic. The different, because having the two of them close together, I mean, it is brilliant.
I remember seeing you do the video for Warwick, and it's unbelievable the amount. Like you've got full Gibson EPO territory at one end,
which is what I wanted. Yeah.
And then you can split them both completely and end up with kind of a Hofner sort of thing, and then Music Man right down the other, and everything in between.
Yeah.
Like it was a great idea.
It was a great idea, and it's a wonderful bass. But it's probably not sort of practical.
Sure. Well, that's a kind of brief overview of some of your signature model basses. But recently, you've made the move to being a frontman for the first time ever. How are you finding that move from being sort of sideman to frontman? I'm joint frontman, which is great, which is very different. I'm not in the middle. It's Gary and I are equally spaced. So and Gary's also made the move to frontman.
Right. Yeah. So, of course, we were both kind of, neither of us are exactly shrinking violets on stage. So it's. I think it's very. If I'd actually had to make the move to a soul sideman, that would have been very different. Right. The fact that Gary and I share everything, share all the vocals and stuff, is different. And the other thing is that I really, really like singing. And because I always did BVs, I've always loved to do BVs. Yeah. I never really thought my voice was strong enough for lead vocals. But the thing is, it's fine for this stuff.
Right.
And I really, really enjoy doing it. What I'm pleased about this, what the worry is when you do something like this later in life, you suddenly sing, and then you suddenly go, oh my God, this is what I should have been doing my whole life. What have I done? Wasted my whole... And I haven't got that at all. Right. No, you were in the right place. You were definitely in the right place before. This is nice to do now, but it's not who you are,
Have you found it's changed, how you perform and stuff? Like, have you had to reduce your pedalboard now that you've got an extra thing to think about?
No, I've increased my pedalboard. Right? I've even added bloody sort of Taurus pedals. It's quite funny. It is quite funny, this thing with the sources. Especially what's funny is that we're actually doing the early Freud stuff when they all had limited arsenals in terms of what was available. And it's it is quite hilarious, all of our pedalboards. It's become an absolute thing. Although none of us are really pedalboard. The funny thing is we all have massive pedalboards, but only Lee Harris gets teased about it.
I see.
He's youngest. So.
Yeah. Fine. Well, outside of kind of doing Source Full of Secrets, you've also you've expanded all the various forms of media you end up into podcasting as well.
Yeah, the Rock on Tours, which, funnily enough, was nothing to do with lockdown.
Right.
We'd already started doing it. We were we weren't going to start it till we had 10 in the can. And the first few were done just going into a studio and with someone having to come to a studio. Phil Manzanero did like that, Nick Mason, we did it at his place, Ian Lefrene. And then lockdown happened and suddenly this thing of Zoom became acceptable. And it turned into, and podcasts, as you know, having a fabulous podcast yourself, became, an essential thing. I mean, what was interesting was how lockdown changed the length of podcasts.
Right.
Because we were told this. Officially, they were meant to be 45 minutes because that was the length of the average commute.
Right, yeah.
And then after lockdown, it was the length of how long can I stay out of my house? And so it increased to an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now some of us got up to an hour 20. People still want to, I love it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, it's been great because and it's really connected with people, because I think what we're doing is really unique in that and what's really nice is when we speak to people who don't know us, don't know anything about us. Gary and myself, and then they sort of, after a few minutes, they realise they're talking to people who kind of know what they're talking about and understand and usually encounter most of the things they have. And so we tend to get really great, relaxed chats.
You've had some
we always get
guests as well.
Yeah. Some great. Well, we had one last week when it was in the Daily Telegraph. They lifted the story that Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to write a James Bond musical. The best scoop we had, though, which was great, we got literally big articles in the Times and the Guardian, which is the scoop we got from Whispering Bob Harris, that Nixon asked Elvis to spy on John Lennon. I mean, come on, that's the story.
That's proper, and you heard it here.
You heard it here first, exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's about all the time we've got here, because we're gonna go now and shoot some videos on.
There's more.
Yeah, well, not in this video, but we're gonna go shoot some stuff on the Interstellar. So, so thank you very much, Guy, for coming and chatting to us.
Thank you. Very, very, very sound interviewing.
There you go. Thanks very much. And we'll be back with more interviews and loads of product demos soon. Cheers.
Bye.